Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome to today's weekly news roundup. We've got a special one today. Not only do we have me and our news editor Shahir, say Assalamu alaikum Shahir, and we also have our history and Islamic studies editor Ustad Kashif Zakyuddin joining us. Say Assalamu alaikum Kashif.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Lovely to be with you guys.
Right. So we are all three of us are in this call today. We're trying to test this out with three of us here, and we'll let Shahir, I guess, take the lead with talking about what news stories have been dominating Islam 360's headlines in the last 7 days or so. Shahir, over to you.
No problem. So starting off with Norway, some positive news let's start with. So Norway's biggest sovereign wealth fund recently announced that they're looking at divesting from a number of Israeli firms that are linked to settlement building in the West Bank.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's big news because the fund has about, I think, $1.2 trillion in assets. So it's no small thing. And obviously, due to the fact that they suspect, a number of firms, including banks, tech companies, and so on, having a hand in or controlling settlements in the occupied West Bank, they've said that they will divest. So that's good news. So we'll see what happens there. We don't have any specifics yet on the number of firms or exactly which firms they're going to sell off assets in, but we'll keep a close eye on that, inshallah.
Excellent.
Yep. And then moving straight on, we've got a very hot topic in Scotland. So those of you following, they've had the gender reform bill that's been going through Parliament since, I think, March, when First Minister Nicola Sturgeon introduced it. So what's happened is obviously last week, towards the latter end of last week, they passed the bill, unfortunately. And it means that now people 16 or 17 can put in a request for a new gender certificate. And what it means is that whereas previously people would have to live 2 years in their quote acquired gender before, seeking a certificate, now they can live up to 3 months and then, seek a certificate that basically stamps their change in gender. And this is all without having a medical diagnosis of gender dysphoria. So it's pretty alarming news.
Did you have a read of that, Kashif?
I'm following the news in Scotland, but I haven't read that specifically what he said. Yeah.
It's been quite interesting stuff. I mean, one of the things was something about an amendment that was shot down to the bill that stopped sex offenders basically availing themselves of this. So someone could sexually assault a woman or rape a woman, and then during the trial, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, during the trial they can say, I identify as a woman now.
Yeah.
And this is something that women's rights groups kind of really kind of got angry about.
Yeah, shocking, because I think Michelle Thompson, the MSP who put the amendment, she herself said, she was flabbergasted that this was voted down. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, you've got someone who's been accused of rape or sexual assault, and during their trial they can apply for a certificate. That means that the victim has to refer to them as her or she, when they've already got that trauma of, what they've been through. So it's a disaster. But only good thing I can say is that the UK government has already expressed to step in and stop this from entering the statute. So we'll see what
That's kind of a side story, isn't it, about the impact of these moves within the SNP, the internal politics within the SNP. So we've had this stranglehold on Scottish politics over the last decade plus, and potentially might be the first kind of crack in Nicola Sturgeon's almost unassailable position. Let's see. I mean, not quite. Yeah. Doesn't.
She's definitely placing a lot of hope in it. She's been campaigning for this for over 6 years herself. So see what happens.
It's the new kind of fault lines of white liberalism. Progressivism.
Yeah. Yeah, forgive me, guys. By the way, I've got a bit of a seasonal cough. So
I think something's going around.
yeah.
That's not the next news story though. How's that for a segue? Next news story is.
So moving on to Dewsbury, we have some positive news. There was an old pub that had been disused for about 3 years and it had been on the market with no one wanting to buy it.
Mashallah, Muslims taking over again.
Yeah, Muslims taking over again. But it's fairly modest. I think I understand from the planning record that they're looking at making a centre that can accommodate about 10 worshippers or students at any one time. So nothing major, but alhamdulillah, still positive news. And obviously, I mean, after the census that came out recently, the data, the area is it's got a pretty high concentration of Muslims, so it's definitely needed. Yeah,
you have to be careful how much you gloat about it. You don't want to be the cause for a renewed fervor of protecting disused pubs and rekindling the desire to get drunk and.
It seems to be a running thing, I'll be honest, because my local masjid was a pub. Before.
I've seen a lot of them, pubs and churches.
Yeah, it seems to be the trend. I think Roshan from Five Pillars, he was saying that we should just rename pubs as future masjids, basically, because that's the peace going. So
you got to be careful with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and the last story today.
The week. So, are we talking about France or are we talking about France? Yeah.
France.
I think that's one of the ones worth touching on, definitely.
Yeah. So it's one of those things. I mean, for Muslims, it's a time-old thing. So there was, I think, a terror attack, but the authorities are calling it a hate crime. The Kurdish community were affected quite recently, but it's just very unfortunate because every time it's a non-Muslim who does this sort of thing, they look at their mental health. They look at their well-being. They look at whether it was a lone wolf, and it's just a shame. But the French authorities, from the beginning, they've been very clear that look, it's not a terror attack. The terror police have been involved, but they see no reason why they should get involved.
Very, very, very seems like a very very
erupted in protests, hasn't it, France?
That's right. Yeah. So there's been riots in Paris. It's unclear, really, isn't it? Why the French are having, or perhaps not unclear. It's actually, I think it's very clear. But there's double standards, eminent double standards, and I think Muslims pretty much know now. They're almost resigned to kind of this narrative. Everybody pretty much knows how it's gonna play out. If it's a Muslim that does it immediately, its terrorism is pasted across the websites, headlines. If anybody suggests that this Muslim might have had some problems in his life, some mental health issues, something that perhaps doesn't justify, but maybe helps explain it. You're justifying this crime. You're apologizing for it. And as he said, on the flip side, we're soon, pretty much, within hours of this, the attack on the Kurdish community, this guy's history was laid out. He's had significant mental health issues. Of course, the word terrorism. You have to kind of scroll down through the articles and maybe find some odd reference to terrorism. If you're lucky, you Google the issue, terrorism is hardly ever being mentioned. Pretty much I think, and I would be unsurprised if that sort of double standard again is at play in the riots as well. The way those communities, those immigrant communities, mostly, majority of them are Muslim. In France, in Paris, in the sort of rundown suburbs, that's part of the reason for the violence. But again, it's not going to be acknowledged by the French state.
I mean, the perpetrator, he's got a history, as I understood, of trying to kill immigrants, right?
Yes, right. He's had another attack previously, some kind of sword attack.
They just released him from prison recently.
Right. Yeah. I mean, sword attack. I mean, without raising,
the French way.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he's trying to, I guess, rekindle lost French, superiority against the former colonized people. It's his right to go around slashing people up. But,
Yeah.
there's one. Whenever this happens, there's always something I remember. I haven't done this for a few months, but I used to, just for fun, browse the global terrorism database. Yeah, there's it's a really interesting GTD global terrorism database. You can do like advanced searches on in different countries and stuff like that. And since like 2016, I think, I've noticed year on year there have been very, very few Muslim perpetrated terrorism attempts or attacks and stuff like that. And UK used to search mostly, and the majority. And there was actually at one point there were more terrorism attacks against Muslims than there were by Muslims, and you just don't hear about these things in the newspaper. And what is this? Is this some lefty kind of conspiracy theory website? No, it's funded by the Department for Homeland Security in the USA. So I mean, they've kind of tied themselves into knots that once you create this kind of, you need some kind of objective criteria to have a database to log terrorist incidents and suspected terrorist incidents. But now once you've done that and you've handed it over to researchers, you're going to find stuff that is going to go against your initial prejudices and agenda. So something like 3% or fewer than 3% of Muslims, or terrorist attack incidents or potential or foiled incidents, including foiled or successful incidents, were committed by Muslims, and the vast majority were like nationalists, white supremacists, and that kind of stuff. Well, I'll have a browse on the French statistics probably later on. If I forgot to mention, brothers and sisters, and you're watching live at home or wherever you are, have a Google yourself. Maybe if you want to get involved in the comments, let us know as well. But yeah, it's just one of the reasons why we need to empower our own voices and get our own narratives out there about these kinds of things, I guess. So if you talk to if you say terrorists or someone, they're going to think of the victims of this, these guys and most other attacks, rather than the perpetrators.
Yeah.
All right, we've got to wrap up for Salah now, but if you like this weekly news roundup, give it a like and a share. Let us know in the comments below, brothers and sisters. If you think we should have Saad Kashif on again, how did you find it, Kash?
Yeah, first time. So
Yeah, first time.
Few hiccups, few
renewed
technical
energy.
issues.
Yeah, Jazakumullah Khan for coming, Ustad Kashif and Shahid, our news editor there, and Kashif is of course our history and Islamic study editor, and I've been your host / chief editor, Salman. But I'll see you next time, inshallah. Final words from you, Shahid?
No, as always, brothers and sisters, I mean, if you have any suggestions or comments, do let us know.
And barakallahu fikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.